Hey, if you want to get ahead in life, just do what I'm about to teach on today. If you will get in and serve and become a part of your local church and put your hand to the plow, there are pastors all over our nation that are crying out for people to help them. And I just want to encourage you that is what we've been talking about last week and what we've been talking about over the next couple of weeks. I'm talking about serving. And yes, there is a joy to serving. Your serving is a pathway and a gateway to promotion. And as we talked about last week, anybody that God has ever used, for the most part, was doing something when he found them. And I gave you example after example, even of the disciples and even Paul. They were all doing something when God called them out. They were already putting their hands to the plow. God never called you and me just to come to church on a Sunday morning or a midweek service and just sit there and sit in the pews, receive the word and be served, but never in turn go and serve anywhere else or anyone else. Listen to me. There is power in submission, and I'm really not talking about submission today, but I kind of am. Because when I am serving, I am taking myself, I am submitting myself to someone else. And trust me, when I truly submit of my own free will, there's all kinds of growth that takes place. If we're looking for change, if we're looking to grow in any way, shape, or form, then we've got to do some things that are very, very different. Here at the church, we laugh a lot because, I went to Peru a long time ago, and I always say, does everybody know I went to Peru? Because I talk about it every service. When I talk about Peru, what happened for me is that when we were on this missions trip, I got put into a situation or into a position where I had to submit to some things that I thought I couldn't do. And when I submitted myself to this ministry and how they did ministry, and it was something that if you would have given me a million choices, I would have never chosen to do any of this. But you know what? Every day I was asked to do something that in my mind I said, I can't do it. And every day God met me with the grace that I needed in order to do it. And by the time the trip was over, I was in tears because I could not do these things anymore. You have to put yourself sometimes in a position so that you can have the change that we really want. Everybody wants change. Everybody wants a different life. But unless we're willing to do the steps or do the things or make the necessary changes or adjustments in our lives, then that change is just going to be a hope. It's just going to be a wishing or a hoping. And we look at other people that have changed and we go, well, they're just lucky, or, they don't know what I've been through, and et cetera, et cetera. And so when we're talking about serving, we're talking about there's a joy that came to us when we serve. There's a joy that comes to us when we give of our lives freely and we sacrifice. And today, we're going to talk about one of my favorite scriptures or set of scriptures in the whole Bible. This is really kind of what one of my life messages, and I love being able to share this verse because it's so relevant for the church today. Amen? So let's go to the book of John, and let's look at John 13, verse 1. John 13, verse 1. It says, Now before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour had come and that he should depart from this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. And supper being ended, the devil having already put it into Judas Iscariot's heart, Simon's son, to betray him, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, that he got up from God and was going to God, Jesus did what? I always say that in church when I preach this verse. I want you to get a picture of this. Jesus knew exactly who he was. He was at the total apex of his earthly ministry. He was at the height of it. Jesus had fed the thousands. He'd healed the multitudes. The lepers had been cleansed. He had raised the dead. He had made money stretch. There were the miracles after miracles after miracles. I mean, if you talk about someone that was just ready to ascend to the throne and take his place, this is where Jesus was. And the first thing that Jesus does at the apex of his ministry is that he reaches for a towel and he girds himself takes off his robes, and he washes his disciples' feet. And to me, this is the biggest example of the heart of what Jesus came to do in the earth. There are so many misconceptions about Jesus, that Jesus could do whatever he wanted to do whenever he wanted to do it, that Jesus was God, and he was. Jesus was all God, but he was all man. And Jesus had a will just like you and I did. And Jesus had to do the same thing with his will that you and I have to do. Jesus, at the very, very height of his ministry, and let me give you a definition of that word knew. When it says that Jesus knew that he had come from God, or that he should depart from this world to the Father, that word knew means seeing that becomes knowing. Then is a gateway to grasp spiritual truth and reality from a physical plane. What we're really saying with all those big words is that Jesus had a true revelation of who he was and what was about to happen. And Jesus knew that right now, at the height of his ministry, he had the greatest chance to give the greatest example of what the disciples were supposed to do and what they were supposed to teach once he was gone. This was the message. And Jesus chose that opportunity to stand up from the table. He took off of his robe, which showed that he was a teacher, a rabbi. He girded himself with a towel, and he began to wash the disciples' feet. Let me read out of John 13, verse 3. Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, that he had come from God and was going to God, with full consciousness of his supreme power and divine origin of the divine glory he was about to return to. Jesus knew he was going home. Jesus now had his mind set on where he had come from. He was wrapping up his earthly ministry. This is it. He's about to wrap up his earthly ministry, and he says, I've got to do one more thing. I got one more teachable moment with these disciples, and this is the impression that I want to leave with them forever. John 13:4. It says, he rose from supper and did what? He laid aside his garments. And when we lay aside our garments, and what we're doing is we're laying down who we are, and more importantly, we're laying down who we think we are. When I serve, when I take off my garments to serve others, what I'm saying is, I have this persona of who I am. Really what I'm doing is I am taking all of my pride and I am laying it down, and I'm now going to wash these disciples' feet. I am laying down who I am and who I think I am. And it says he took a towel. See, at that moment, Jesus could have reached for a crown because he was at the top of his ministry. But instead of reaching for a crown, he reached for a towel because it was more powerful than a crown. And it says that he girded himself with a towel. It was the look or the work of a servant. He made himself on purpose look like a servant in front of his disciples. It was meant to signify his assumption of servant's work. Jesus put on the uniform of a servant. It says in John 13:7, if you know these things, blessed are you if you do them. Out of the Amplified, it says, if you know these things, you are blessed, happy, and favored by God if you put them into practice and faithfully do them. I'm giving you right now one of the keys to have a happy, productive, effectual, wonderful life. Are you ready? Jesus says, if you understand this principle of bowing down and coming off of your own free will, of laying aside who you are and who you think you are, instead of reaching for a crown to lord over people, if you reach for a towel to undergird people, then this is the life you'll have out of the Amplified translation of John 13:17. Are you ready? If you know these things, you are blessed, you are happy, and you are favored by God. If you put them into practice and faithfully do them. Each and every one of us as a believer is called to serve. Each and every one of us are called to pick up a towel and wash disciples and wash other people's feet. Now, we don't do that figuratively all the time, but it does mean that we should have. Jesus was not instituting a foot washing ceremony. I really don't see anywhere else in the Bible where this ever happens again. Jesus was not instituting that now we're going to have foot washing services. What he was instituting is I want you to have this mindset. I want this to be a dominant thought in your Christian walk, that instead of always looking to be served, you look to serve. Because if you will always keep yourself in a place of wanting to serve others and not be served, it will keep you in this beautiful, wonderful thing called humility. And let me tell you, if you can stay, God blesses the humble. If you can stay in that place of humility, then you're always going to have an open pathway or gateway for the blessings of God. When I go into a church, if I go somewhere and I expect the best seat, and if I expect to be served, and if I expect to be first in line, and if I expect for all my needs to be met, then I am not putting myself in a position where I can live more by the blessings of God. I need you to understand that this is not about washing feet. This is about having a mindset that I am here to serve others and not to be served. Jesus, who had every right to be served. He had every right to have, he should have been worshiped. He should have been carried out on their shoulders. He should have been marched into the state house and put on the throne and made the ruler of all Jerusalem. But no. What he chose to do at that time was he took his power and he said, I want this mind to be in you. I want you to think like I do. Out of the Passion Translation of John 13:17, it says, so now put into practice what I have done for you, and you will experience a life of happiness enriched with untold blessings. Hebrews chapter 6, verse 10 says, for God is not unjust to forget your work and labor of love, which you have shown towards his name, and that you have ministered to the saints and do minister. A blessed and happy life is taking off our garments and blessing others. I just want to scream it from the mountaintops that if you are unfulfilled in your Christian walk, if you feel stuck, if you feel like you've hit a plateau, if you feel like, I'm not valuable, any of those things, then I just want to encourage you just to check yourself and say, in my local church, am I serving? Am I giving of my time? Am I giving of my talent? And am I giving of my treasure? Because I've noticed, and I've been in full-time ministry now for almost 28, 29 years, that people that do those three things faithfully, they give of their time, they give of their talent, and they give of their treasury, they're very, 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 very rarely in my office needing any type of counsel. They have the finances that they need. They feel fulfilled in their life. And there's a sense of purpose that comes on us when we help others. When I went to Peru, I took pictures of some small children that we ministered to, and we would do this drama. And to me, the drama, and I'm just going to be transparent, I thought was really hokey. And I thought, we're going to do this drama. They're going to run us out of town. I'm the slowest. They're going to catch me first, And so we would go and we would do this drama. And it took me so far out of my comfort zone, you couldn't imagine. But I remember doing this drama in this one little school, probably one of the last places that we did it. And there were little 3- and 4-year-olds just sitting there, and I had to take pictures of their faces. Because as we did this drama, and there were no costumes, there were no special effects, no CGI, there was nothing. It was just 5 people, dressed in street clothes, and we were portraying a picture of Jesus coming into the earth and healing and saving and delivering. And the look in these kids' eyes was like nothing. It was addictive, because when we went and we served these schools and we served these children, there was a breakthrough that came into their life where then they were able to receive Christ. There was healing that take place, and I guarantee you, because 80 people decided to go serve, and that's really what a missions trip is. When we decided to go serve in this nation and to give of ourselves to raise our own funds, we didn't go there to be served, but to serve. All of a sudden, there were thousands, over 20,000 people got saved. There were over 300 documented healings because 80 people decided that it was more important to serve than to be served. I want to encourage you, get out of your comfort zone, serve in your local church. God needs you, we need you. Jesus is Lord. We'll see you next week.